How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Investing with Zeke. Please like and subscribe. Well, how was your weekend? Last week was crazy in the market, and that's what I want to talk to you about and why it's been crazy. And I'm going to talk to you about a company that I never really talk about ever. And it's kind of crazy because it's the only reason why the market is looking the way it's looking. And if you haven't heard of the company, it's called Nvidia. Now, if you don't know what they do, that's kind of understandable. I personally think if you watch the market and you don't know what Nvidia is doing, I don't know if you've been just drinking paint thinner with your cereal, or if you're just going up to the plain old painted wall and just licking the paint off of it. I don't know what you've been doing with your life if you don't know what Nvidia is, but I'm going to tell you what they are. Right, so basically, long story short, what Nvidia does is generative AI. You hear anything generative AI, it's Nvidia. So what Meta's been doing is building the largest LOM, large language model, ever. So I think that Meta's potentially making another version of the internet. Not where Google, when you Google something, it just brings up a list of websites to go to get the answer. I think we're stepping into a new phase of the internet, and Nvidia is insanely responsible for it. Now, is it time to sell at this point? And when I go online and I'm looking at things and I'm trying to investigate, should I take some profits? I keep seeing stuff and things. Nvidia beating numbers, Palantir growing. So they can't even tell you how much they're going to grow. They're just 22% because they like to shoot themselves low. And they kind of do that kind of stuff where Nvidia is just laying it out. They're like, we don't know when we're going to slow down. We're growing forever. Forever, forever, and ever. That's what they're practically saying. So the thing is I kind of believe them. Let's say this was Tesla, and Tesla was pushing a $2-3 trillion market cap, which it has. We have May coming up. We have elections coming up. You know what I'm doing? I'm taking profits. I'm taking tons of profits, even though I'm in companies that have tons of growth, because I'm not in Nvidia. And I do think with me staying invested in the market, and just like any other investor, if you're staying invested in the market, not really taking profits, Nvidia is a $2,000 stock. If it's not a $2,000 stock and it starts to drop, we're in major trouble. Major trouble. So that's why it's so important to pay attention to a company like Nvidia. And I do. And if I heard anything crazy, I'd be panicking like crazy. But Nvidia is so consistent. They're legit. I mean, I believe their numbers, and I believe they're going to continue to grow. In the future, we're not going to have Google. I believe, Google's going to be around, of course. We're going to have YouTube. But, this is going to bring some competitors in the market, and that's why I think Nvidia does have the ability to be the highest market cap in the whole market. Even over Meta in certain ways. Meta can practically print cash because they're the leader in advertising, but at the end of the day, you got to buy those chips to do those reels, to do the generative AI and at large language models. You need Nvidia. They're hand in hand, really. So that's why I think there's a lot of legs to this market. And when you go around and look around and you see stuff like this, let me show you.
Sure, let's welcome in the team.
Let's listen to what Wall Street is saying about Nvidia.
Education for Charles Schwab. And Kathy Jones, Chief Fixed Income Strategist of Charles Schwab. All right, thank you both so much for this afternoon's panel. Joe, let's start with you. Let's talk about some takeaways from this week.
The whole week was really based on Nvidia earnings, and then they met, they beat, they crushed, and the market held. So I think from an equity standpoint, there was a little bit of fear kind of going into that. And we saw a little bit of hedging heading into the event, a little bit of put buying. And then, boy, after they came and knocked the cover off the ball, all of that fear dissipated very quickly. We're starting to see a lot of kind of upside call buying again as investors are ready to just continue riding this train up. We've been talking about concentration risk for a while. I don't think that's abated much. We've seen a little bit of kind of spreading out this week. I think the earnings cycle has shown that it doesn't have to just be IT and communication services that can lead. We've also seen expansion in profits in healthcare, financials, industrial. So I think that's helping to widen the base a little bit. But we as we're approaching kind of all-time highs and continuing to push towards new all-time highs, there's not a ton of breadth below the surface, but I think enough to sustain it, at least in the short term.
All right, let's flip to the fixed income side. Kathy, we had some Fed rate talk this week. Let's talk about the impact to the bond market for this week. As we wrap up this week, we're seeing the 10-year, the yield on the 10-year dip a little bit today. But
See, guys, this is also what makes it really hard. A lot of times you see a lot of weakness in May. However, you got the Fed is looking to start cutting rates right during that time. Long story short, we're going to need each other. Like, we're holding. We're going to hold and we're going to buy the dip and just see what happens. And this is tough because, we've been through this pain before where we've seen a lot of our money disappear. So the difference is there wasn't a foundation. We're balanced on companies like Tattooed Chef and Tesla. Now we're balanced on companies like Palantir, Meta, and Nvidia. I think this is different.
What's been the impact that you've been watching?
Well, as your previous guest indicated, the market backed up. It's now absorbed the idea that the Fed is on hold for a little bit longer than the market had been pricing in. So now you look at 2-year yields, they're discounting three rate cuts this year, which is about accurate, I think, or certainly
right before the election.
What we've heard from the Fed. Long-term yields have drifted a little bit lower today as the curve reflects that expectation that the longer the Fed's on hold, the slower growth, less inflation down the road. So we're just kind of in a holding pattern now, waiting for all of the economic data that comes out over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, you're right. It does look to be a holding pattern when you look across asset classes today. And Joe, you talk about Nvidia's and just kind of the impact on the overall market. And it's still, one of our guests earlier talked about how it's difficult to bet against Nvidia. It's like betting against Patrick Mahomes. Let's talk about just the impact to the overall market and just the market scope. Today, in general, you're still seeing Nvidia hold on to gains, but across the board, we've got choppy action. Do we expect to see Nvidia still be the leader?
Well, I mean, let's just kind of look at what's happened so far. Coming into earnings, Nvidia was about 4% of the S&P 500, around 5% of the Nasdaq in terms of market cap. And it was responsible for about 35% of the year-to-date gains in the S&P 500. Now that was prior to earnings, right? That was prior to the stock moving $120. So, it continues to be a behemoth. It continues to kind of pull the markets with it. You saw a lot of that with some of the with some of the complementary ancillary stocks within the sector kind of moving up yesterday. But there's a little bit of divergence today too. We're not all the chips are participating today. And like I said, I think one of the things that I don't think it needs to become a concern, but it just needs to be on investors' radar a little bit is that there still is this concentration. When I was looking at sectors and specifically that were trading above their 50-day moving averages, there's only about 4 of the 11 GICS sectors that are there with 70% of the components trading above that 50-day moving average. So, you got a market that's pushing at all-time highs, but not everybody's participating. It can stay that way, and it can stay that way for a while, but just be aware that there's a little bit of crumbling below the surface.
All right, and Kathy, what are you paying attention to next week? Are you expecting any kind of a flight to safety, or what would be the catalyst for that?
Well, I doubt there'll be a flight to safety, but we do have the PCE numbers coming out, which we know, of course, are important. And after the CPI came in hotter than expected, I think there's going to be some concern about PCE following suit. So I think we're looking at probably a pretty choppy market, pretty cautious market, and a lot of traders probably squaring up positions ahead of those numbers coming out. Most of the big numbers will come out at the end of the week.
Both of these are important. Of course, we have Fed speak
all week, and we have some auctions next week. So important. It's going to be busy and choppy, but I think the focus will be on that PCE number.
Oh, yeah, PCE certainly in focus for next week. Kathy Jones, Chief Fixed Income Strategist, Charles Schwab, and Joe Mazzola, Director, Trading Education, Charles Schwab. Thank you both.
Thank you. Well, that was an update, just from Wall Street's point of view. Like, they don't really see an end to it either. I mean, and if somebody buys Nvidia, like tomorrow or something, and you see them buy Nvidia and they're talking about it, it isn't that crazy, because buying Nvidia is practically like holding on to your stocks now, because Nvidia really, something major would have to happen for Nvidia to crash. Their earnings are just phenomenal, and it's really the prop up to the market. You look at day-to-day life, and you see regular people, they're struggling, so it's really confusing. It's like, Bitcoin shouldn't be at 55,000 or hitting all-time highs, and these companies you shouldn't see a Nvidia run like a Tesla did during COVID. But I mean, I do believe Nvidia actually has a reason to run, where Tesla was more of Elon's a good talker, has a lot of following, where Nvidia is just coming out and just crushing it, putting up numbers, just really, really doing it. So people buying Nvidia, is it something I want to buy? Not really. Because I own Meta, and I'm just too heavy in the whole AI space. And like I believe it has years to grow, like where to the point where Meta could become like the number 1 or 2 leaders in the market. Like, definitely. Like I see it. I see what they're doing. They're buying these AI chips up for a reason. And if Google doesn't hop on board and maybe try to compete with a Meta, or Apple doesn't start to come around, Nvidia's blowing past Apple's valuation. And so is Meta, and so is probably Palantir. This new generation is starting to be born. I do believe Microsoft is coming along with it, because they're heavy into it, just like Meta is. So, and it's just starting. This is just the beginning. And that's why the companies I own, I really can't sell. I mean, I do have like an Under Armour, a Telray, those, which I thought actually more of the MJ space would come out. But really, it's been Nvidia. So congratulations to the shareholders over there at Nvidia. They're the ones saving our ass right now. They really are, and there's nothing I could bad to say. I can tell you what, you better not short Nvidia. Like, I wouldn't do that. Even if you're buying, I don't blame you either. So that's just kind of the way I see it. I just kind of wanted to give you my opinion on the whole Nvidia thing. I keep my eyes on it, and if you're invested into individual stocks, you better keep your eyes on Nvidia too, because they're the reason why we're going crazy right now. Bitcoin, I still really can't explain, except there is starting to become, real use cases for Bitcoin. So like I said before, I was wrong on Bitcoin. I just don't know how to value it. Maybe I'm just too stupid to value Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin holders have been killing it too. It's just, it kind of is what it is at this moment. And, we're stepping into a new era. And, it's better to be part of it. And the only company I see right now as a company that I would buy in the AI space is Palantir. And I already own a decent amount of it. That's a big chunk of my portfolio. So, yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.